Hello and welcome back to another episode of TV's podcast. I believe it's like part 9 or something. I'm actually going to go a little bit off of my plan here. I need to go find more copper, first of all. Second of all, as for my plan for the topic, I was going to continue where I left off in part 8, but then I realized that I didn't really explain very well who the collector really is. And so I figured that it would be better if I were to, in this episode, go more in depth on what the collector is supposed to be and how they're supposed to, like, what they are, what the story behind them is, a little bit more about what the curse is. So, long story short, the collector is a curse. In the modern time, the collector is, for all intents and purposes, a curse. Now, that may not make exceptionally much sense. How can someone be a curse? And, well, it dates back to, or at least the way that I've designed it, I've intended it to date back to a very long time ago. Much before, very much before the likelihood, like the setting that we're in. It's intended to be much older than the world even that the campaign setting is. A really long time ago, basically. Some might say even in the first world, if you follow that kind of lore, as there's this lore about this world that was created first, but then was kind of destroyed by destroyed as a bunch of the gods wanted to put their own people into it, and then that's what created the material plane. Yada, yada, yada. Now, whether the collector was actually in this then or not, that doesn't really matter. What really matters is that this collector, or said the collector, or at least the original one, for as long as they have existed, has had only one goal, and that goal being to collect. Collect what? Well, knowledge, artifacts, magic, things of value. Didn't have to be anything particularly shiny, and it just merely needed some historical significance to someone. If someone had interest in it, then the collector had interest in it. Now, the collector also knew that, death was almost inevitable. He'd seen it all of his life until, I say his, but really, the gender of this original collector is it's basically unknown, or it's irrelevant at this point, really. I just have a bad habit of saying his, because it's just easier for me to explain in that way. So if you find yourself being confused about it, don't worry, it really doesn't matter, and just use him for simplicity. Yeah, for simplicity's sake, I will just refer to them as a him, or a them, or an it. It really doesn't matter for the story. Now, this individual, the collector, well, they didn't want to die. And, well, as many do. Very understandably, not a fan of dying. Yeah. Uh-huh. Okay, this would ensure that only 60 is being taken for this one. Take a slitter, and then I... Gosh darn it. Now, there. There we go. Okay, let me get back to my train of thought here. I got very much distracted by this logistic thing here. Alright, the collector, collect things, yada yada yada. Alright, so this original collector, they were obsessed with collecting, and well, they also didn't want to die. Dying meant that they could no longer collect. So in their obsession, they sought out a way to live forever. Using magics that they had collected, knowledge that they had collected, whatever they did, they would use whatever they could to prolong their life as long as they could. Meaning, basically becoming what is kind of like a lich, or possibly was a lich for a long time. Could have been a lot of other things, too. Now, even liches die, though, and the collector understood this. Even some of the most powerful, like, even gods die. There are literally gods that are floating dead in space. Canonically, in D&D. As such, the collector had to turn to deeper things. Eventually coming across a powerful entity. This entity posed him a deal that by offering up by the collector offering up the very essence of their being, not just their soul, but everything about them, their very concept of themselves. And this other entity would ensure that his purpose, the collector's purpose, would be eternal. Never to end, never to... Oh. Always to continue. Now, the collector really liked the sound of this, and so he, of course, agreed. And so this entity created the collector's curse, consuming all that the collector was, and creating a curse that would ensure that the collector's purpose would be eternal and unending. Now, how does it do this? Well, first, it finds... Well, it ensures that there is at least one individual always infected at all times by or at least afflicted by the curse. Always. And forever. There is never a time in which there is not a collector. Now, how it does this is up to interpretation and or up for debate. It's possibly even still being determined, as it basically does so in whatever way is narratively necessary to do so. For whatever story the character is being played in. But my usual reasoning is that this curse, it works like a parasite. It latches on to the magics of the world, feeding its way into all sorts of places. Now, make sure I get... Yeah. Now, this curse has been around for a long time. That means that there has been collectors for a long time. Now, the curse also waxes and wanes in power. It is not as powerful as it was when it was initially made. And sometimes it can be just as or more powerful than it was when it was initially made. Again, suitable to whatever story that I'm playing. stick a merger here. Okay. Take this one. Cable line. And this will be the wire line. Okay. And then this should be able to just drag along here. All right. Now, that it's to explain why the collector keeps on coming back and why the collector would have knowledge pertaining to things that realistically they didn't have. They shouldn't normally have any way of knowing in their lifetime at the time they lived. And it's because the curse also grants this the collector knowledge from its past lives. Right. Into there and delete that. The collector, of course, doesn't always have access to this knowledge, as it sometimes requires the curse to be a bit stronger. But generally, when the curse is strong enough, it can allow a collector to quickly ascertain what has value to being added to the collection versus what is mundane and or not useful. Great, I need to skip this back just a tiny bit. I need a tiny bit more, all right. There we go. Now, current iteration of the collector, initially the curse wasn't all that strong for them. Average, even at best. It was at first, at least, and it was merely because of circumstances that they were even in a very decent position to begin with. As this collector very initially was given was fortunate to be in a position in which they could obtain a fortress that would be ideal for housing the collection while they were out adventuring. But I'm getting ahead of myself now, aren't I? Back to this original collector. With their desire to make their purpose eternal. Well, eventually, with their purpose made eternal, they, well, it would turn out that this curse, it's almost like the original collector was turned into their own curse, sort of thing. And so many attributes of the original collector can often shine through when the curse is particularly prominent. Now, we're gonna be doing this one, turning into the pipe. Now, I said that the curse is like a parasite, and it does that with the collection too. As these collectors obtain more and more magical items and things, it likes to leave its marks on these items that they collect. A very adept collector, when the curse is much stronger, can even bind these items to the collection. But otherwise they tend to more allow the collector to, it allows the curse to use these items that were in the collection as anchors for when it needs to reemerge. And I'm gonna need another couple of constructors. There we go. Now, the, it's already connected. We're gonna have to hook everything up here. Got it and start over. Splitter. Now, this collector... sorry, not the collector. These collectors often don't really realize what the curse is really doing to them. Or when they do, the curse itself makes them... The curse very intentionally prevents them from ever coming to care what the curse is doing to them. Which is possibly part of the more horrifying thing of this, as it strips these collectors of all personal identity. Okay. Making them identify as the collector. Or at least that's when it's the curse is after a certain point. See, the curse actually has tiers of things it'll do to an individual, and to an inflicted individual, depending on how powerful the curse is. So, one of the first things that it does is it causes them to want to collect. That's first and foremost. Every collector gets the urge to collect. Second, each collector is instilled with a very intense sense of honor. $60 goes between 3, right? I just realized I'm doing the math wrong here. I have 60 and I have 6 of these. That don't work. When I need 120 for those. Now I gotta redo all this again. Take a merger. Which then goes into a splitter. There we go. Alright, now that should work. Now, myself distracted yet again. Let's quickly zip up everything here. Merger. Which then goes into a splitter. Too short or something dumb like that. Come on. Now I can figure it out. sheet, cover sheet. Alright. Now, sorry, I have gotten myself wildly distracted again. Terribly bad habit I have. Where was I? The collector, the curse, parasite. Ah, yes, the tiers of how the curse ends up afflicting individuals. Well, as I said, it starts with the collection. Then it instills a huge sense of honor. The reasoning being that, well, the collector wouldn't have wanted the collection to be, well, he wouldn't want his name as the collector to be basically consolidated into just some chump who steals things from people. The collector wanted honor for their name. They wanted to be known as an honorable individual. And so the second thing the curse creates is a sense of honor. The third thing the curse does is begin to strip the original identity of the afflicted and replace it with the collector. They begin to identify as the collector rather than whatever their previous name was. Who they were before begins to matter less and less to them. Now, at this point, it has a side effect, as it also shapes the individual in the, or at least it tries to shape the individual into the visage of the original collector. However, that image has been very much subverted over time. Or perverted, I guess, as it takes that a little bit too literally now. In this case, it forms their flesh of it begins to cause the flesh of the individual to rot and become almost undead looking. Now, it's only an aesthetic change, really. Even with flesh falling off, it is usually painless. However, the reason why it makes them into what looks like an undead monster is that was or is what the collector looked like. My current idea is that in some demi-plane somewhere, the original collector had one of those like clone spells or such that, well, as the original collector was fully consumed, the soul never traversed into it, leaving it to just rot eternally inside of some demiplane. But as it's in a demiplane, there isn't really anything to rot it, so it just dries out. And gets progressively wilts. To the point that if you were to disturb it, it would begin to fall apart and become dust. And that is the closest thing the curse has to a reference point of what the collector actually looked like. So when it is forming these people into it, it makes their body almost fall apart, or constantly be falling apart. But then the curse has to restore those parts. And the parts that do fall off crumble to dust and dissipate rapidly. But because of this undead visage that it tends to give the collector, that encourages the collectors to hide their face, often using a mask of some sort to do so. Okay. Now, I added my boot in. Weird. I should have done sheep. Alright, there we go. Oh, come on. There we go. Oh, I need a bunch more iron plates. Okay. Now, this side effect encourages the collectors to hide their own face, as it can be often disturbing to especially the living. Even though the collector is, for all intents and purposes, alive. The curse often makes it difficult to tell such at a glance. Now, trying to think of anything else important to bring up here. I'm going up here now. Let me think if there's anything I missed here. Well... Well... Hmm... Now, I suppose, what makes current collector unique compared to other collectors of the past, or maybe not unique, but distinct compared to more modern, but previous iterations in recent times, would be that this collector has managed to become more collector than that which is usual. In short, the collector due to the curse being recently made very more prominent, as I discussed at the end of the last episode. The original collector, or at least more of what the original collector was, shines in the out of this collector's visage. Yeah, it is much more evident who this collector once was. And or they are more like the original collector than they have been in a long time. Part of that being that they can part of it allowing them to be far more aware. About things that the collector would know. Or at least the original collector would know. And be more in tune with knowledge that the collectors had in all over the ages. And the collector has had quite a lot of knowledge in their time. Or collectors have collected much knowledge in their time. A fact which this current iteration of the collector will take great advantage of. Now, collector is one who because this collector is now more like the original collector. You get to see, I get to have them show off many more of the traits that the original collector would have had or did have. As well as explore much of the knowledge that this collector has acquired over time. Which, frankly, has been quite exciting. I'm trying to remember if there's anything that I've missed. Well, yeah, I think that's pretty much everything about the collector. Who they are, what they stand for, what they do. There we go. $60, 120, 180, 240. I know, we're technically pulling more copper than we're using right now. So I shall actually come over here to my copper and cut it off. Yeah, so I think that's all about the collector for now. In later episodes, I'll be able to go over more about developments with the collector, but that's basically what the collector is currently. There's this curse that perpetuates the purpose of the original collector who had this curse made in the first place. With that, thank you for watching. I hope you liked this video. It was a little bit longer than I intended. I got distracted again. Still got to work on that. Thank you for watching. I would appreciate it if you liked and subscribed. Though that's not entirely unnecessary, as I do this because I find it fun more than I care about getting likes or subscribes or subscriptions. I'm still working on trying to get this format to be a little bit more enjoyable, and I've noticed it being, especially with the scheduled videos that I've had, not been particularly successful. So I would also really appreciate any comments or such, suggestions. Of what I could do better to make things more interesting. With that, I say thank you once again, and see you next time in part 10, where we continue the story off of leaving the volcano of Odd. Bye!